And also remind everybody that tonight's meeting is broadcast live and being recorded as always. Tonight's invocation will be given by Lisa Cole, our town clerk, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by our town council. Being a special meeting, we usually have a student that leads us in the pledge, but we didn't get one. And before we do the invocation, just I hope everybody can remember and have thoughts for the tragedy up in Minneapolis, up at the school up there. So if we can keep them and those families in our mind.
Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance tonight. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Gillespie.
Here.
Councilmember Lisk.
Here.
Councilmember Lytle.
Here.
Councilmember Morales. Here. Councilmember Priolo.
Here.
Vice Mayor Egbert.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Quorum present.
Thank you. Next is item number 5, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible action regarding the proposed Regional Transportation Authority Next Plan, RTA Next, including background on the RTA, details of the proposed plan, next steps, and follow-up items.
Thank you. And we have Shane here, and we have Mr. Ortega, our interim executive director of the Regional Transportation Authority, and I'm very excited to have you here. I was telling Shane this has encompassed 7 years of my life, 3.5 of Shane, and I'm very happy that Mr. Ortega agreed to come down and kind of give us a, I think Vice Mayor called him the miracle worker or something along those lines, but it's been a long journey. I'm not expecting that we're going to impart all of this information and struggles that we've been going through in this many years, and I think Mr. Ortega is going to kind of keep it high level and talk about the process and where we've come to at the end of the day from a regional benefit perspective, and everybody winning from that perspective. So, Shane, did you want to start? Any comments before inviting Mr. Ortega?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to put a framework around this and what the end result is we're looking for. This is not being put in front of you as a plan for your adoption.
Right.
That jurisdictional authority rests with the RTA board, and they took action on this plan Monday afternoon. As part of their action, they also passed a resolution that is asking the Board of Supervisors to call an election for a special election for March of 2026 and to put this plan in front of the voters for consideration. So what we're hoping to do tonight is more or less kind of study session format,
Right.
where we're presenting this plan, which is the culmination of many, many years of effort. Answer any questions that you have, but between Mr. Ortega, the mayor, and myself, we want to communicate to you that this plan is a plan that represents a regional best effort to put something in front of the voters, and the timing is such that it needs to happen in in March, for a litany of reasons. And Mr. Ortega can get into that if that's part of his presentation. And so what we're hoping to do with the council is answer any questions that you might have, get some consensus in terms of this being a decent plan to be put in front of the voters. And if that's the case, if we're successful with that tonight, the motion that you would make, the action that you would take would be to join your voices with the voices of the RTA board in recommending to the County Board of Supervisors to put this plan in front of the voters in March of 2026. So that
Right,
would be
and-
that would be the actionable part of this.
Right, and the real important vote is the voters, really, and that's what we've been trying to advocate for. Put the best plan regionally that we can together, but the ultimate say of it is the voters, whether they feel it's, right. So there'll be a whole action plan, both from staff's perspective as well as from the industry, the transportation industry, to communicate why it would be a benefit to the community.
Mayor, I know that there's going to be back and forth, but as you can imagine, when you're taking a regional perspective, a good plan, a decent plan, is a plan that probably doesn't represent what everybody wanted from their agency. It's a plan that everybody got something that they thought was worthy.
Right.
And I think this plan represents that, but we can turn the time over to Mr. Ortega.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Ortega. You have 3 minutes. No, I'm teasing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you synthesize that down into 3 minutes, 7 years?
I've sat on the other side.
So
and
you might remember that picture?
I do remember that picture. So I think that picture, speaks volumes. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to present in front of you today. I think that picture is many, many years. I was thinking when the mayor said 7 years, I've actually been at it 7 minus 1, because I took a year off. And so when you think about what it took to get a regional transportation plan, it's really amazing. And as Shane introduced and talked through, it was an evolution, it was a journey. And it had some bumps along the road, I don't mind telling you. There were bumps and speed bumps and even barricades and a few other things. But ultimately the key is, and we'll call it proof in the pudding, is in the plan. But that picture, Mayor, is really amazing, and I think it does speak very handily about what we went through. So this is really an opportunity to just give you, again, a few high-level thoughts, and I won't go into the plan in detail. I do have a QR code at the very end, so if you'd like to snap a shot of the projects, I'll have that for you, and then you can go through it, and I've got a copy. I'm happy to drive that. So what does transportation really mean? And oftentimes we think of transportation in a singular form of vehicles and cars, if you will, and getting a car from point A to point B. But it's much broader than that. It really is about the movement of goods, services, and people. And it's across the entirety of the region. And it's very hard when you're looking at something like this, trying to define what is the benefit to this group or this individual, right? But I would suggest to you, as we're going through this, there's something in it for everyone. Everyone who lives and works in this region will benefit from this plan, and I'll go through some of those opportunities. So I mentioned it includes obviously roadway, transit, bicycle, pedestrian safety improvements, and the key piece to that is it's for 20 years. The way that the statutes work, it requires that we establish a 20-year horizon, and that's a tall order, because when you think about trying to plan for 20 years in the future, it's difficult. We have a lot of models and a lot of opportunity to project. But I can tell you one of the challenges in the 2006 model was we did a lot of those projections in terms of growth of population, growth of sales tax, and both of those projections fell short, and they caused us some serious challenges within the region. Just to give you an idea, the 2006 projections for population for the entirety of the county was over 1.4 million people. Today we're just over 1.1. So that 300,000 population that didn't materialize caused some serious challenges in terms of revenue, in terms of the demand. Because remember, when you're projecting that many people in the region, you really are looking at how do you address moving those folks, goods and services, at that population level. So we had roads that were projected to be 6 lanes, that we don't need 6 lanes. We only need 4 lanes because the average daily traffic didn't materialize. When it comes to the revenue, just to give you some round numbers, Our projections were about 2.7 billion back in 2006. Our actual at the end of next year will be about 1.7 billion. When you look at a shortfall of $1 billion, it's almost impossible, if not impossible, to overcome that. There's a lot of tricks in the bag, but those are the challenges. So then the question is, we have a 20-year horizon, right? So what does that look like for us today? Well, the first thing is we looked and studied what the model and kind of what the challenges were back in '06. So the first thing we did is looked at population growth. Our current model shows about 180,000 people over the course of 2050. So we're very, very much scaled back in terms of what our population growth in the region will be. Now, you might think that might be understated. We don't believe so. We think that it's conservative in terms of the number, but it is also an opportunity for us to look at and make sure that, hey, we can test that on a frequent basis, and I'll get to that in a minute here. The second part is on the actual sales tax. Sales tax generation that we use comes from the College of Business, from Dr. Hammond at the University of Arizona. And he gives us projections over the next 20 years, and he gives us 3 levels. There's a pessimistic, a baseline, and an optimistic. And we focused all of our attention on the pessimistic level. And I can tell you that today, we're actually receiving more revenue as a region than our pessimistic model shows. So we're a little shy we're a little nervous about over-projecting. And so we've scaled that back, and we've held the entirety of the program to that level. So the next thing I want to mention on this slide is we have to say and tell you that this is a new tax. And you will hear that language, and you're going to scratch your head and say, well, wait a minute, it's really a continuation. That's true, it's a continuation. But formally, it has to be presented as a new tax. Not an increase in tax, because it's the same level as what the 2006 tax was. But for our conversations, and I want to explain that because you will hear that, and it's important to know it is a replacement tax of what the 2006 tax was. The mayor mentioned the journey. It shows that it started in about 2018, and you can see all of the steps. I won't go through all of them, but it was an iteration. There was citizen input, there was jurisdictional partnership feedback and input, there was technical feedback and input throughout the entirety of the plan. So as you go through all of these steps, we're at basically the green circle today. And hopefully after the second, and I'll get to that in a minute, I'll be able to move that green circle to the very end, because that is when the Board of Supervisors will call for the election. We are asking that they consider that at their September 2nd meeting, which is next Tuesday. And we have a resolution that's been provided to them, asking them to call the election in March of 2026. Shane had mentioned why we need to go in March. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. The way that the statutes work, in order for us to start collecting tax, it has to be April 1, immediately following whatever election, right? Okay, so I want you to think about that for a minute. The original tax ended, or will end, in June 30 of 2026. Well, even if we went in May, because of the way the statute works, we'd have to wait until April of 27 in order to start collecting tax. So as we started looking at this, realized that in order for us to start collecting tax, so there was no gap in funding, we would have to go to the voter in March, because that's before April, and then it's like a 2-week difference, if you will, between the election and when we start collecting the tax. That is actually in statute. We've argued that point. We've had legal opinions about that. Doesn't matter. That's really what we've been told. We have to do that. So that's extremely important. Now, there is an option. We could go in November. We could go in the following year. We currently spend about $32 million a year in regional transit. And that's for Dial-A-Ride, paratransit, and fixed routes. That would go away after June 30 of 2026 because we have no other way to fund that today. The legal opinion thus far is we cannot use other monies for that, and so there would be a gap in those services. And that is not a reduction in service. In some level, there is an elimination of those services. And so obviously that got the board's attention. Here's some highlights, pretty self-explanatory. I will tell you that the vast majority, and I'll get into the pie chart here in a minute, is for road improvements and all-inclusive. But they also include safety, ADA, and active transportation. And when you think about, again, moving goods, people, goods, and services, all of those have to go together. Now, to the credit of your mayor, Mayor Murphy, and your city manager, I'll call him Shane, the next bullet point became very important to everyone, and that was the flexibility for pavement rehabilitation. And so originally that said arterial pavement rehabilitation. And through a lot of dialogue and feedback, we expanded that and made it more flexible to include collectors. They have to be functionally classified, but it gives opportunity and flexibility for the entirety of the region to ensure that the pavement on those main and functionally classified facilities are rehabilitated. Now, this is not maintenance. This is not going out and slurry sealing or chip sealing a roadway. This is a reconstruction where you have to design the pavement for a 10-year life as a minimum, which is different than we're just going to go out and chip seal and let it last for another 3 to maybe 5 years. This is a 10-year horizon for this piece, which I think is important to note. Transit, I mentioned, Dial-A-Ride paratransit is a piece of that. Environmental, we heard from the community. A lot of folks are very concerned about the wildlife in our region, and so making sure that they have safe passage across our major roadways and thoroughfares is important as well. I want to spend just a quick minute talking about debt service and the administration. One of the things that everybody would like to see is their projects in the first period. Everybody wants their projects up front. Well, that's great, except that we have a cash flow problem if that's the case, because we have, it's pay as you go, right? You get money in every month and every year. So what we've done is we've built in the opportunity for debt service and debt financing of some of those projects. Well, what I've suggested to the board is let's not start with that in mind, but after about 3 to 4 or 5 years into the program, we can make a decision about what that looks like going forward. And if it's appropriate, and we do have the need, not only because of cash flow, but things are going well as a region, our revenues are holding, all the other projections are holding, we may want to move some of those out-of-year projects earlier into the program. And there's an opportunity for that. So this is the pie chart. Basically shows the entirety of the program. I won't go through it. I just kind of talk about it, but it's important that you see it as a whole. Now, I will point out one thing. This is based on what I call an artificially constrained budget. It's $2.67 billion, okay? Ultimately, we increased the overall amount to account for potential additional revenue. So, because we're at the pessimistic level of revenue, the thought is, what happens if we get more money? And how do we expend it? And so the thought then is, we put those into each of the categories. In the good old days, we would have called that contingency, but really it's potential additional revenue. And so the idea and the thought there is to give us the capacity, should we get more money, that we can expend it. And we're not hampered by having to either figure out how to legally do it or even go back to the voter at that point, where the plan is up front, it's provided to the voter. I will also tell you, as the mayor mentioned, ultimately this has to go to the voter. And in my opinion, that is the ultimate form of accountability. The voter can tell us what their thoughts are and how they see this plan, this program. So let's talk a little bit about Sahuarita. Just to remind you, this was one of the projects. It's a before and after. Oops, that's what happens when you play with the, uh-oh. All right, how do you go back? Oh, you hit the back button.
Got it.
Okay, got it. So this is just a reminder of a project that was as an investment as a part of the 2006 RTA, which you can see the before and after pictures. And I think it has been a great project. I think it's really done well, and I think it's done what it's supposed to, and we all thought was going to happen. So let's talk about the investments going forward in RTA Next. There's 3 that are on the larger side, if you will. We call them the new regional projects. The first is La Villita, Sahuarita Road to Nogales Highway, about $34 million. The next one is Pima Mine Road, from I-10, or excuse me, I-19 to Nogales, about $23 million. And then the third is, I'll call it a relatively new project. Through the mayor's leadership and the city manager, we expanded a project in the Saurita Road, which includes a reconstruction of the interchange. Now, there's two numbers there, and I want to draw your attention to them. The 15 million is the RTA investment. So that's basically the local match. The 85 million is the ADOT match or the ADOT dollars that we would leverage. And so that 15 million actually buys us that 85 additional million for that project, that interchange. Extremely important when we're looking at how the dollars in the region are really leveraged to bring in more money and to really address the needs that we have that we wouldn't otherwise be able to address on our own. A few other areas, just wanted to draw your attention to them. There's about $10 million in the safety line item. There's $5 million, as I mentioned, for the arterial and collector pavement rehabilitation, and $14 million for the transit dollar right, paratransit, and fixed transit as well. So oversight, I mentioned the accountability, very direct accountability from the voter right out of the chute. But how do we continue to make sure that we are staying on track, if you will? So public input, obviously. We have a Citizens Advisory Committee that will be reconstituted as a part of this plan. And we're going to actually engage them more frequently. I think before it was about every 6 months or every year they'd get together and make sure that the plan was going well. I think that it would be of value to have them meet quarterly or more often and really make sure that if we're seeing revenues aren't making it or costs are increasing, that we have a very public discussion about that early on. Let's not be talking about it in the 19th year. Let's talk about it early on. And with that oversight and that opportunity, I think it gives us that chance. I already mentioned the conservative revenue targets. They're basically projections, but they're pretty conservative. I will also tell you that when you look at the growing needs of the region, I think when you look and you dissect the plan, you can see that we've anticipated a lot of that. But it wasn't the staff at RTA or at the Pima Association of Governments by themselves. It's really tapping the expertise that exists with our jurisdictional partners, making sure that they're at the table through the various committees to say, hey, we've got this potential challenge that's coming, or we know about this piece of property over here that might be ready for development. So it's really engaging and making sure that we are partners as we go forward. This is the final slide. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is the QR code. I tested it right before I got here. It's the first time I've used it because it came up last night in a different presentation and I thought it would be of value. That is the project list. So basically the entirety of the program is now listed, and we have it online, and you can see it's on RTA Mobility, but you can click that and it's on your handouts as well. Happy to answer any questions, Mayor and members of council, that you see appropriate and fit.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions from council on, again, my feeling has always been the ultimate decision maker is the voters. We try to regionally put together a good balanced plan. We think a good balanced plan, probably everybody disagrees with a little piece of it, but for the overall majority of it, and every jurisdiction got to weigh in on what they wanted to see as their priority. So, and to Mr. Ortega's point, not only are we going to have those check-ins, but the regional council is going to have some policies and check-ins so we can avoid some of the pitfalls that we had, along the way, so we don't get to our 19th year and figure out, well, we're $1 billion. But from our regional council's perspective, even though we were $1 billion short, we were sweeping all of the other regional monies, which left us somewhere between $300 and $500 million short. But it showed our commitment. In Saurita's case, our project was already done. Before you go for a next RTA, there was a commitment by everybody that we should finish. So the front, as Mr. Ortega said, a lot of the front loading is on the front end for the RTA 1 projects to get those completed. But part of the magic of this is, if it passes, it only ties up the PAG regional monies for about 5 years. And those other monies will be available not only in what you're seeing here, but for also this other regional money that we compete for. So the El Toro Road pedestrian improvements, that came from those other regional monies. So,
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and I should have mentioned, and I apologize, that's a component that is part of RTA in that it shows, as you look at the plan, there's non-RTA funding for the completion of the RTA 1 projects. But that's only for 5 years. Now, beyond 2031, about $45 million a year is expected to come to the region that's available. And so when you do the math, that's very significant. That'll be several $100 million over the course of the 15 years in the remaining parts of the plan, which then gives everyone an opportunity to address, we'll call it non-RTA projects. In my world, I thought everything was RTA, but I guess there's other needs out there, right, that weren't met as a part of the conversations. And so there's an opportunity now and a path for there to be those dollars available to the region as a whole. Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. Ed?
I guess the RTA 1, you came up with a shortfall. I assume that's because the contracts weren't finished on time or so forth. What do we have in RTA next to counteract that? I mean, so if a contractor doesn't get, say he's supposed to be done in May, he doesn't get done into July or later, will he still get paid for that time, that extra time, or how does that work where we come out not $1 billion short?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lytle. So the delay of projects was only a part of it, and quite frankly, a small part of it. A bigger part of it was the shortfall in revenue from the sales tax. So the revenue that was going to pay for those projects fell way, way short. The other piece that happened was a significant increase in cost, more so than anyone ever anticipated, okay? Those are facts that occurred. Now, what I've suggested to the board is that we, as the RTA, can take a more aggressive role in facilitating project delivery. And so this conversation about the shortfall should not have happened in year 19. I'm not being critical, I'm just suggesting that in the future, we can have those conversations earlier in the process and earlier in the plan. Okay, so that's number one. But number two, with our engagement, looking at alternative delivery methods, not just the formal or the traditional design bid, but also design build, looking at what role the RTA can play in right-of-way acquisition and help and coordinate with utility relocations on those complex projects. I think that traditionally we have said that's the partner's responsibility, so go forth and let us know how it works out. And I think we know how that's worked out. So now it's an opportunity to say, well, let's rethink that. This is our responsibility to deliver this program. It's not your responsibility. And so I think that has been, the leadership of the board has really outlined that framework. And so now it's up to me, if you will, or us and the team to establish what those fail-safe pieces are so that we're not having this at the 11th hour, we're doing that up front. And I believe very strongly that that will pay off. And again, it's going to be a function of everyone sitting around the table and really establishing what those roles are and recognizing there's accountability. And part of what you just ended with is absolute accountability and having a conversation around that with all involved, contractors and jurisdictional partners.
And Mr. Ortega also had the other portion of it is we're starting on the pessimistic model, so we're less likely to find ourselves, $1 billion. Not only do we, on a collection pessimistic model, on the growth a pessimistic model. So we're much more likely to probably hit our target than we were the first time. No one predicted the pandemic and a great recession in there. And if at least if we had picked the pessimistic model in 2006, we would have probably fell short, but not $1 billion short on there. And maybe the sweeping might have actually made up the difference, but we've added those other fail-safe methods, I would say, into this one. Debbie, do you have any questions?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Gillespie?
Well, thank you for being here. A concern I have is, let's say a city or town has their funding for something, but then they keep changing the plans or or, delays, delays more because of that city or town are causing delays. And so the finances of that, the change of plans increase. Is there a way that we say, hey, yes, you can change the plans, but you are financially, you as that town or city are responsible for that, and it's not on to the whole RTA, everybody else?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Gillespie, absolutely. There's two parts to that. First and foremost, if you change the plan outside of the scope that was approved by the voters, then it's your nickel. You have to fund that, or you have to pay for that. But the second part is incredibly important as well, which is the delay. And so one of the things that we're working on as a part of our administrative code and how it's kind of like the rules by which all of this is implemented, is what happens if someone is in line and then they're not ready, right? For whatever reason. Could be utilities, could be public input, it could be a variety of things. How can we, within the confines of the plan, say, okay, we're going to set you off to the side because we have other folks that are ready to go. And then it really becomes a matter of making sure that, again, going back to the accountability, that, yeah, we set you aside, we're going to keep moving, and we're going to dissect why these delays are occurring. One of the things that I've observed is we haven't had what I'll call an escalation of challenges. So if there was a challenge on a project, whatever it is, utilities, right-of-way, public input, there was no escalation to the RTA board to say, wait a minute, time out here. We as the RTA board are going to hold you, jurisdictional partner, accountable because we told the voters we were going to do this and it's not materialized. And that's a little bit of a change in terms of the approach and really the mentality about how we have to deliver these. It isn't just your responsibility, it's our responsibility. And by the way, we're going to be looking over your shoulder, but more importantly, asking, what can we do to help you? What can we do to help and facilitate your delivery of that program or that project?
And Dr. Gillespie, Shane's been a leader with some of the other managers to create these policies and administrative that will be built in, so we're not waking up 7 years down the road. There was a big queue, somebody else was ready. So that's we're trying to build in as many lessons learned from the first one to try to avoid that. And that has been one of the things that has come up, because sometimes it's within your purview, you want to change the scope, or it could be like Union Pacific, right? And you get stuck there, which isn't really, but it also gives the flexibility to move other projects forward and not just rolling money and money without seeing any results for it at the end of the day. So we built those in on this particular plan, which we didn't have on the first one. Yes.
And so if I understand right, the first, kind of before the new projects, we're finishing up the previous projects from RTA 1. And if I heard right, that's going to be about 5 years or so, or how long will that take? And I guess with some of these policies that are going into place with, hey, if you've changed your plans, are there where those entities are saying, okay, we have to pay the difference here with some of those plans that have changed from RTA 1? I don't know if my question is very clear.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, it's adequately clear. I'll try to answer it, and if I didn't, then we can rethink that. So the RTA Next plan includes rescoping of certain projects from RTA 1. So we start new, we start fresh. And those rules, if you will, the administrative code, will apply to all of RTA Next. And so all of those that are listed on the plan would have to comply. Now, what I will also take a run at is making sure that all of those projects that are currently under construction or getting ready to go to construction would also have to comply with the administrative code. And I believe that we would be on strong ground to do that, because those projects, even though they're in the RTA, the 2006 RTA, are still RTA money. It's still public money, and I think we can make the argument. But to your point, when you look at the rescoping, and this is where it has really become clear, in that if we're not within the scope that was outlined for the voter, then we need to have a conversation with the jurisdictional partner. Doesn't mean you can't add an extra lane, or you can't add an extra whatever, but you gotta pay for it. You gotta find another way to pay for it outside of the regional money. And that has been a question, I think, on a variety of different fronts. And so what we've done is looked at the demand for those projects that are rescoped and said, here's the new demand. And so this is it. This is your last chance to make any other kind of change. And so as you look at those scopes and you compare them to what was originally in 2006, you'll see most all of them are reductions in scope.
If you follow up on that? Now, remember, you don't have to get up to speed in 7 years and one meeting.
Yeah, I'll keep thinking though.
Yeah, Shane?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Priolo has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Councilmember Priolo.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have two questions.
Okay.
What tool is used to measure population growth within the region?
This time or last time or both?
Both, this last period and then moving forward if this is adopted by the
Thanks.
voters?
Yep, Mr. Ortega?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Priolo. So the population growth is based on census projections. That's what the projections are. How is that actually reviewed on an annual basis? There's actually a formulaic approach to that, which is based on number of building permits within the region, based on group dwellings, and we actually get an estimate every year on what the population is in the region. Every mid-decade, there is a general census. It's not the decade census, but there is a general, I'll call it a general census, and that checks those numbers. And so it's basically a reset every 5 years. And that's how we obviously knew that we were very, very short on population growth in the 06. Going forward, we took some of those models and really scaled them back. And the growth projections back in 06 were significantly greater than what we're using today, as you can tell by just the sheer numbers.
Did that answer that question, council member?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay. What's your second one?
I still want to drill down a little, if I may.
Yep.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we have a census that turned out to be inaccurate and it shortchanged us? And is this census one that was used?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Priolo, I'm not familiar with that. I apologize. I just don't know. I've not heard that. I do know that our projections, we work very closely with the University of Arizona, and they check and double check in different ways how those projections go forward, and usually will give us a realm of possibilities, if you will, with regard to that growth. But I'm not familiar, and I'm sorry to say that. I apologize. I just don't know
Yeah.
on that particular item.
And again, no matter what model you're using, you kind of have the Sears, best, better, good, better, best. And we probably used more of our optimistic models on many fronts last time. And the regional council decided, no matter what the model was, we were going to go for the pessimistic. So that's what would, hopefully give us a little bit of comfort that if we miss it, we're not going to miss it certainly by as much. In your second question?
So I know hindsight is always 20/20, and in the spirit of self-examination for how well the region did with the projects for the last 20 years, because we're at the end of that period, beside the pandemic and the horrendous supply chain problems and the inflation that was experienced, was there any attempt to take a look at how well things were managed and learning, lessons learned from the road, so that if there were any mistakes in management, not coming on budget, on time, within constraints that were mentioned, so that lessons are learned and applied and move forward for success in the future?
Yeah, Mr. Ortega, you could touch on the fact of bringing in PAG RTA staff and some of the things you touched on.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Priolo, before I leave the population, what I will do is go back and look at that question, and I will provide a response, and I can distribute that to you all, and that way you'll have, because I just don't know. With regard to, as I mentioned earlier, There are a lot of lessons learned. And one of the things that we have really looked at was what happened exactly. Now, overall, I would say we did good, but for the lack of revenue and for the increases in costs, et cetera. When you look at the model of delivery, it was actually not bad. But when you're scrounging and scraping to figure out, and you're basically sweeping all the regional money to deliver a program from the outside, it doesn't look good. But the actual delivery has gone pretty well overall. But I will tell you that the engagement of the staff, the RTA and PAG staff, to facilitate delivery, I think will be key. And again, I can't overemphasize enough, the accountability has to be at the RTA board. There has to be a direct connection there so that the board knows ahead of time when there's a potential snag or potential challenge, not after the fact, not after the bids have come in and we've got a huge shortfall and a huge problem. So I think you're going to see in the not too distant future, and the mayor mentioned the city manager's leadership in the administrative code. The administrative code is oftentimes forgotten. It's just the plan. The administrative code is actually the rules by which this is implemented. And I think that as this develops and evolves, you're going to see some of that accountability built in. A lot of the questions that you're asking are spot on in terms of what will be addressed as a part of that administrative code.
And just from a high level, because we've been talking about it for years, can you just touch on, the funding that comes from RTA and then the state and the feds, and ADOT has no money for, the next X number of years, but that's to me one of the more ruling messages, right? That without this money, there's no cavalry coming and no help virtually, for the foreseeable future. But if you could just touch.
Sure, Mayor, happy to do that. Members of the council, Vice Mayor, the bottom line here is that this is a local generated revenue source. And when you start looking at the sum total of the revenue in the region, there's really two. And this would be the third. The first is what we call the regional money, the PAG money. That's about $45 million a year. And that's for all the improvements. And then the ADOT money, which is allocated to PAG, is about $150 million a year. Now, those are big numbers, right? Except when you look at the needs in the billions of dollars, I'll let you do the math to see how long it would take us to try to save or amass the dollars to make the projects happen. And so the third leg, obviously, is the RTA and the revenues that come from the RTA. And you can see where those dollars and how those dollars go and are needed in order to address the various needs. And the difficulty with transportation funding, aside from the formulaic conversations we'll save for another day, but the difficulty is if you don't put enough into it, the infrastructure starts to deteriorate at a faster rate than you can maintain it. And that's really the challenge. And you can look around the region and you can see that we are really addressing needs from many, many, many years ago across, not just from a growth standpoint, but also from just a purely infrastructure deterioration standpoint as well.
Because we've had those conversations, the gas tax hasn't been adjusted for 30 years, electric cars pay nothing to HERF funding, the reason we had solid waste, pickup conversations, the utility tax dedicated, which is baby steps to what we could do, and we have newer infrastructure, so that helps us a little bit. But county, citywide, they have older infrastructure on top of things not being adjusted. So, this is the local. I don't know if anybody at the league, I went to the ADOT presentation that when I was interviewed by the paper a couple of days ago. When you look at ADOT funding, they really rely on MAG, Maricopa, and PAG, PEMA, to cover about 80% of the funding. So if we don't do that, and then the rest of the region the state is 20%, and that's not enough money to even touch that 20%. My opinion, if this fails, and you add in all of PEMA on top of that, well, now you've made that 20% into whatever it is. It's much greater.
That's correct.
And the money doesn't change.
Nope.
So you're just going to be, skipping that around in very, very small tranches. And we're already way underfunded for the state needs and where the ADOT funding is coming from. Councilmember List, did you have any questions? Didn't want to forget everybody online.
No, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions before I open up to call to the public? No, we're good. Mr. Sundberg, would you like to address the council?
But there's no call to the public on the list.
Well, I mean, it's not officially called to the public, it's it's on the agenda item. So you can always talk to us on an agenda item.
You can always email if I don't talk to you.
The same 3 minutes apply,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's
just
on
real
this
quick.
agenda.
I don't think RTA did a good job last time. I look at the roads that we got. We got a movement, Nogales, which really didn't help us, and a little widening street, which was nice but not needed. The ones we have on this one are not regionally connective. They don't try to help us if there's an accident on the freeway to get better transit between here. They are totally local roads. They do not help us at all. There is no benefit for this move for the change on Pima Mine Road. There is no regional benefit for the Lavalito Road. It'd be nice, but there's no like blowing country club up to Tucson to make things easier. This, even people that love RTA say, Sarita's getting the dog on this one. This does not serve us well regionally. This is a crap bill for us. So I would vote no as a resident. I would encourage you guys to vote no. If we want to do something regionally, let's do something regionally, not something that totally doesn't connect us with anybody. This is a bad bill. And the people should vote no, and you as a town council should also vote no.
Thanks. Lisa, would you like to address the council? And just for the record, if you didn't fill out a card, I forgot to mention, please fill out a card to the town clerk.
Hello,
Hi.
my name's Lisa Haggins. I've lived in Sahuarita for 16 years now, and I love the regional plan because it does, to me, cover the whole region. I live in Sahuarita, but I drive to Tucson every day, and I can see the benefits that we get out here. First of all, we have a lot of benefits of living out here. The dial ride helps so many people out here, and this regional plan, we know everybody doesn't get every single thing they want, but most of the people get something, and it helps us not just from a transportation part, but for economy, right? We want big companies to come down to Sahuarita. I want to work in Sahuarita. I don't want to drive to Tucson every day to go to work. I love it here. So why we have to look at it from a big picture. They worked very hard. I was in a lot of the meetings. We did a lot of personal polling. I got together with a lot of contractors and other companies and associations, including SABA, SALC, and we put together and paid for funding and polling, and we heard from every person in that poll. First of all, 13% were the only ones that knew what RTA was, the first one. So as much as we talk about what RTA didn't do or the hiccups, we know there was a lot of things that went sideways there. The accountability plans I've seen this team build over the last 2 years has been phenomenal. They're not going to sit back and I feel that there was a little bit of a lack of transparency with some older people who were in the team that are no longer with the team, hence we have Mr. Ortega here. But there is definitely an opportunity for all of us to benefit from this. And if we want to keep growing our economy and moving it forward, this really is the way to go. And this is not about my opinion or any of your opinions, really. This is the voters. And I just ask you as a citizen of Surrey and somebody who's very passionate about this industry and the growth and us being on the map, is give it to the public and let them decide, because ultimately they are the ones who benefit or don't, and let us get there. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all you do.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Lisa. Appreciate it. Thanks, and I forgot to
That's okay.
remember to
Hi.
fill out a card
I'll-
afterwards.
I will do
Thank
a
you.
card. Hi. Good evening. I'm Christy Street. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Southern Arizona Leadership Council, but I want to just quickly tell you that I consider one of my best decisions ever to have married a graduate of Sahuarita High School. So class of 87, thanks for producing that lump of clay into something that has become a wonderful human being. So Sahuarita holds a fantastic place in my personal heart, but tonight I want to just echo a couple of key points. I mean, I'm appreciative for Mr. Ortega's information. And his job is education. And here at Southern Arizona Leadership Council, our job is to sort of take, let's see, if we were a fast food restaurant, he might be the frozen chicken parts, and my job is the finger licking good. So I want to just put into perspective a couple of the real benefits of regionalism. So there are absolutely projects that have specific benefit to the community. But I think that if you took in totality RTA 1, which it delivered projects for this community, plus RTA Next, and you even kind of extend this out to RTA Next, God forbid. I know we don't want to go that far out, but you have to really consider that infrastructure is a long-term investment, and regionalism is necessary to accomplish that, because if we all just try to go it alone, not only is it inefficient, it's ineffective, and it's economically impossible. And it's a little bit like having a roommate. Can you live alone? Absolutely. Do you have to have a lot more money? Probably. Here we are, and some days the roommate's going to be very clean and tidy, and some days they're not. But we all live in Pima County together. I encourage you to take kind of an ebb and flow. It all works out in the end, and the end should be a really long horizon when it comes to infrastructure. I also want to kind of point out to you that leadership matters, and I want to thank Mayor Murphy in particular. I think you've had some courageous moments over the course of particularly the last year, but you've done a lot of work. I want to thank Shane particularly. You have, the Technical Management Committee does not get the credit it deserves. That group is the experts that really arm wrestle before the Regional Council gets in and does kind of the slam dunk at the end. So thank you so much for your time and expertise. But I also want to say that the culture and the leadership at PAG and regional transportation oversight of the staff has dramatically shifted. And that took courage, and it's not worth really rehashing kind of how we got here. The point is, we got here, and he identified a plan for adhering and holding accountable from a leadership perspective. And so I ask you to exercise your leadership and help us promote and explain this to the public. Education and advocacy will go a long way. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. And just to touch on one of the points, I always reflect on if I went to Fry's and I asked about Sahuarita Road, as you saw the picture, you know, where it was, 99 probably out of 100 people would think, one, we did it, which we did. We were the project manager, but probably they would all think we paid for it, which we didn't. The RTA, you know, paid for it. And that's going to be a marketing communication job, because as Lisa mentioned, only doing some surveying, only 13% of the people even understand kind of about the RTA. When they see a Twin Peaks project up in Marana, they go thank Marana, which again, they were the project manager, but they were not the funder of it. And when you look at the Sahuarita Road interchange, you know, that's even a bigger partnership because we're going to have ADOT money, so we're leveraging kind of like on Samtec. You know, we put in $1 million and we got $4 million back, so it's that return on investment. So that's going to be part of, you know, not only the staff's job, but also the industry on trying to communicate, you know, what they funded, where these improvements came from, how we fixed, you know, some of the bumps on the road with the policies and administrative code on going forward. But at the end of the day, it's up to the voters, and really this is just allowing them to go to the supervisors to say, officially put it on the ballot. And then the whole, you know, it's like you're in a football game, you can't even get to the Super Bowl if you don't get to the playoffs, right? And this is really just trying to get it to the playoffs in my mind. Shane?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You know, it's difficult as a rural community with some geographic distance from the metro Tucson area to talk about, are our projects regional in nature or not? You know, I think about the most recent add to our project list, that being the interchange improvements on Sahuarita Road. And just draw your mind back to previous conversations with the potential Phoenix Zoo and its desire to have its main entrance off of Sahuarita Road. And if that project came to fruition, you know, what kind of traffic Sahuarita Road would be getting, it would definitely be of a regional nature. And you think about what this community, and Tucson for that matter, what that's going to look like 20 years from now. A north-south connector on La Valita Road could be incredibly important to the circulation capabilities of our community. So we're talking about a plan that has a 20-year lifespan and all that's happened and changed in our community over the past 20 years. And so you just keep that into perspective. And then I wanted to underscore the importance of the work that's yet to happen. And we've talked a lot about the administrative code. Mike Ortega talked about that in his presentation. I can promise you that the TMC and the regional board have very much kept at the forefront of our minds the importance of implementing administrative policies, creating and implementing administrative policies that benefits from lessons learned in the past. And we have a lot of work ahead of us to create these policies and to vet them and ultimately have the board approve them. Mike can attest, he's in a different capacity, but previously he was a member of the TMC, and we wrestled. I mean, we wrestled a lot. We had hard conversations. It was always civil. It was always a pleasure to work with Mike and my other counterparts in the various communities. But they were tough issues, and I think what we strived to do as a TMC was to make sure that no stone was left unturned, that we talked about it, understanding that there were some dynamics at play and some difficulties, but we talked about those issues. And we all had a common goal in mind, and that was, can we get a plan put together that was transparent? It took feedback from the CAC, it took feedback from the regional board, it benefited from the expertise that was around the table, and can we put something together that the board would feel comfortable ultimately adopting? We finally got there, I believe, with the plan that's in front of you, but it was a journey, and it was a lot of hard work and a lot of difficult conversations with the right questions being asked and a commitment by all around the table to just stay seated and engage in those conversations until we found an outcome.
Yep. Thanks, Shane. Any other questions for Mr. Ortega at this point? If not, maybe because I did a lot of hours, I'll move, which I don't usually. I'll move the plan to recommend to be moved to the Board of Supervisors for approval to be put on the ballot for March of 2026. Shane?
Mr. Mayor, a hand is up by Councilmember Priolo. Maybe we do that before you take your vote.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Priolo?
I second your motion.
Oh, well, okay. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Kim? Councilmember Lisk?
I said aye, sorry.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Aye.
Any nays?
Can
Motion
you hear
carries.
me?
Yep, I do. Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, colleagues. Really appreciate it. Having no more further business, we're adjourned.